We're expecting a lesson today on the third way. And that's not what you get. I was moved to change today's lesson. I can't come before you and teach on dancing with the divine today. As difficult as it might be for me, and as difficult as it might be for you, I'm called to speak about what is happening in our country right now. You know, the definition of a mass killing is where 4 more people have been shot. In 2019, here are the numbers of mass killings in 11 countries. France, 0. Spain, 0. Australia, 0. The UK, 0. Italy, 0. Germany, 0. Netherlands, 0. Brazil, 1. Canada, 1. Mexico, 3. The United States, 250. 3 of which happened in the last 7 days. Gilroy, California, 4 people dead, 12 injuries. Dayton, Ohio, 9 people dead, at least 26 wounded. El Paso, Texas, 20 dead, more than 24 injured. In 2 of these killings, Gilroy and El Paso, hate-filled white supremacist manifestos were uploaded before the shootings. The shooting last night, early this morning in Dayton, is still too new for the authorities to figure out what the ideology of the killer is. This is what's happening in our country. Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison for working to overthrow apartheid in South Africa, said this: "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." And another spiritual giant in his famous sermon, The Drum Major Instinct, Martin Luther King, tells a Bible story from Mark. Now, this story takes place as Jesus and his disciples were on their way to Jerusalem to experience what we now know as Holy Week. Jesus had told the disciples what was going to happen to him. And then after that, James and John, 2 of his disciples, also called the sons of Zebedee, also called the sons of thunder, came to him and they said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." And Jesus says, "What is it that you want me to do?" And they replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." And Jesus says, "You don't know what you're asking for. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. And Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. And whoever wants to be first must be servant of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." So James and John are making a specific request from Jesus. They wanted to sit at the left and right hand of Jesus in the kingdom of heaven. They wanted that glory. They wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to be recognized as being the best, the first, the leaders. And the other disciples got angry with them for presuming to ask such a thing of Jesus. And we might also condemn them for being so presumptuous. We might think, who do they think they are? For getting to sit at the right and left hand of Jesus. What makes them think they're so wonderful? But as Martin Luther King in his Drum Major sermon says, before we condemn them too quickly, let us look calmly and honestly at ourselves. And we'll discover that we too have those same basic desires for recognition, for importance, The same desire for attention, the same desire to be first. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King called this desire the drum major instinct. And he goes on to share how the drum major instinct urges us, nudges us to be joiners. How some people will join everything, do everything for attention and recognition. Now, I believe that a lot of good comes out of that drum major instinct. There's a lot of good that comes out of people joining together in service to making the world a better place, no matter what the motivation is. Not for nothing, but selfless service is a myth anyway. We cannot serve without being blessed in the world. Service is for us. In giving, we receive, no exceptions. So Jesus said to the disciples in substance, oh, I see you want to be first, you want to be great, you want to be important, you want to be significant. Well, you ought to be. If you're going to be my disciple, you must be. But Jesus reordered their priorities. He said, don't give up that instinct. It's a good instinct if you use it right. It's a good instinct if you don't distort it and pervert it. Keep feeling the need to be important, feeling the need to be first. But, he said, I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in generosity. I want you to be first in service. And he transformed the situation by giving a new definition of greatness. He said, I can't give you greatness. And I can't make you first. You have to earn it. You have to go out into the world and do that which is yours to do. True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And the right and the left hand aren't mine to give. They belong to those who are prepared, who do the work that we are called to do. In his sermon, Dr. Martin Luther King went on to say, and this morning, the thing that I like about that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. And I want to add that we need to have courage. That we need to have courage in the face of what happens in our world and what we have become complacent to, perhaps. Of what we have come to perhaps think that there's nothing that can be done. They have to do it. I can't do it. In the face of that, we are called to have courage and to stand up and do what is ours to do in the world. Dr. Martin Luther King ends his sermon this way. He says, yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. I want to leave a committed life behind. Yes, Jesus, I want to be on your right or your left side, not for any selfish reason. Not in terms of some political kingdom or ambition, but I want to be there in love and in justice and in truth and a commitment to others so that we can make of this old world a new world. So what I say this morning about that is bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. To bring it on so that in the midst of this gun violence, in this injustice, in this racial bias and white supremacy, that we can stand up and speak and do what is right in our world. As I said before that scripture I quoted by Mark, it was the Holy Week where Jesus was preparing for his own death. And that week when he was preparing was a week for him of faith, of centeredness, a week of trust, a time of balancing out all of the wrongs, the sins, the evil, and the violence of the world by simply being himself. And this is what we are called to do. This is what we are called to balance out what we see, the sins, the evil, the violence, with our centeredness, with our faith, with our courage to stand up in the world to do what is ours to do. And just like Jesus, we are called to take action in small and in large ways. Each of us have gifts that can be put to use in our world. Personalities that can be the instrument of love. Feet that can go on sacred errands. Hands that can help lift the burdens of our brothers and sisters. We are called to serve, to speak, to march in our communities. We're called to speak in our families and in our workplaces. But it's also remember to recognize what we are serving. We are serving oneness. We are serving love. We are serving harmony in the midst of humanity. An old rabbi once asked his pupils how they could tell when the night had ended and the day had begun. Could it be, asked one of the students, when you can see an animal in the distance and tell whether it's a sheep or a dog? No, answered the rabbi. Another asked, is it when you can look at a tree in the distance and tell whether it's a fig tree or a peach tree? No, answered the rabbi. Then what is it, the students demanded. It is, he said, when you can look on the face of any man or woman and see that they are your sister or brother. Because if you cannot see this, it is still night. So what's mine to do, what's yours to do, I dare say, is to excavate the darkness that is in our own heart. The darkness that adds to this in the world. Whether it's a darkness of cynicism, whether it's a darkness of implicit bias, whether it's a darkness of absolute racism or white supremacy, we are called to look into our own hearts and begin to root that out. To stop thinking and acting as if we don't have a part in this. Because we do have a part in it. I have a part in it. You have a part in it. And sometimes that part is merely keeping quiet and thinking, oh, there's nothing I can do about this. The world needs our commitment. The world needs our action. All people, black, brown and white, all faiths, all ethnicities, all sexual orientations deserve to live in peace. No exceptions. You may think this is a political statement this morning. I've heard that before when I stand up here and talk about these kinds of things. It is not a political statement. It is what Jesus would do. And if we are to call ourselves founders, followers of the work, the life, the teaching of Jesus, this is what we are called into. We cannot be complacent. We cannot be quiet. We cannot, in the face of all that is happening in this world, stay home and not do anything. Zero in most of the other rich countries in the world. 250 in ours. And it is only August, for crying out loud. Mexican-American civil rights activist Cesar Chavez said this. It is possible to become discouraged about the injustice we see everywhere. But God did not promise us that the world would be humane and just. God gives us the gift of life and allows us to choose the way we will use our limited time. He says it's an awesome opportunity to use our limited time on the earth to serve. Another story. During the Second World War, a group of American GIs were in France and in a little village that had been bombed heavily. And they were in the bombed out ruins of the village church, and they were waiting for their orders to move out. And they were waiting and waiting to find out where they were going to go next. And some of them got busy just to fill the time and started to assemble the broken pieces of a statue of Jesus that had been destroyed in the bomb. And they got most of it together. They got pretty much all of it assembled, but they couldn't find any parts of the hands, any of the fine parts. And they were trying to figure out what to do, and then they had to leave. And then one of the GIs put a sign at the base of the statue of Jesus which said, "I have no hands but yours." This is so true. Jesus is not going to come down in a blaze of glory and fix everything that is going on in the world. It's not going to happen. How it is going to happen is when we stand up and we be Christ consciousness in the world. When we speak the teachings of love and harmony and peace and prosperity and nonviolence. When we stand up for what it is that we say we believe in, that's when Jesus will come again. That's the eternal truth. The sacred and the holy has no hands, no feet, no voice but ours. And yes, we are clumsy at times when we do this work. We falter sometimes when we do this work. Sometimes we put our foot in our mouth when we do this work. But that doesn't mean we mustn't try. A couple of weeks ago, or I don't remember if it was last week, I quoted another Talmud quote that said, "We are not obligated to finish this work, but neither are we allowed to abandon it. We must keep going in the face of everything. Stand up for what is right." So I invite us to drop our attention to our heart space. In the face of this, we are called to be centered. We are called to go to our hearts. I invite us to find ways to bring peace and love to our current situation. I invite us to hold the vision of an awakened society. A society willing to change and grow. A society willing to give up the culture of guns and violence that is so much a part of being an American. I invite us to help change consciousness. Let's take a deep breath. And let's pray. May we each do our piece to end white supremacy and terrorism. May we hold the vision of an awakened society. May we be guided in co-creating a world that rejects violence in all forms. May we live in love. May we be peace. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.